Good morning. I'm Kaylin, Coach Maven, creator of Soul Keeper and co-founder of the Golden Flow System of Accelerated Enlightenment and Well-Being. I'm here to talk to you today about second chances with children. Now, of course, when your children are real young, ages 0 to even somewhere around 2, it's sort of irrelevant. But as you start to introduce some behavior management, in other words, you're trying to manage their behavior, which is always a great trick, it's really beneficial to understand what your system is going to be, in other words, how you handle things, understand how you are going to be a soul model so that you're living by your soul keeper agreements, and you're modeling the behavior that you want, and how you're going to deal with when their behavior isn't what you want it to be. One of the most important things is to make your decision about second chances, and I'd like to talk to you about why, generally speaking, I don't recommend second chances. It's always important to always have exceptions. There's an exception to every rule. But when it comes to working with children, one of the most important things is that we be consistent with them. Because otherwise, today there was a second chance and tomorrow there isn't, and then tomorrow it becomes this, why isn't there? And it actually, for your purposes of making your life simple and more enjoyable as a soul keeper parent, it's going to make it a lot easier and simpler for you when you're consistent and you don't have to invite arguments about why there's no second chance this time. If you instead sometimes have an exception to the rule, that goes over better. You can explain why there's an exception. Otherwise, overall, when things are constant and consistent, what happens is everyone, both you, your child, maybe your partner, maybe any other children that you have, the siblings, all get to know what's going to happen. They know how things operate, especially if you're as a soul model. They know what they know what happens, and for example, they know to be polite, and it's always going on, and so they just fall into sync with it. If there's a problem and you don't offer second chances, if your kids are fighting, or if your child has left something out that they weren't supposed to, or something like that, it's really important that they also just know what the consequence is. When consequences change, so that today there's a second chance and tomorrow there isn't, what happens is it breeds confusion. It breeds all sorts of unknowns, uncertainty for both of you. On the other hand, when things are more so spelled out, so this behavior results in this positive consequence and this behavior results in a negative consequence, so to speak, then the kids always know. They just know, and they're not going to fight you as much, and they're going to go with the flow of what the consequence is meant to be. One thing about this that's really beneficial is that in life, we as adults have consequences. If we don't pay rent, we risk being evicted. If we don't pay our mortgage, we risk losing our home. If we don't put oil in the car, we risk burning the engine out. And there's no one to talk to about a second chance. There's no one to argue with. And while most of us adults do sit there and argue with God or whatever it is, that you may argue with, and kind of go, why is life so unfair? The truth is, it's just difficult for us. It just is the way it is, and the consequences are what they are. And when we've learned it instead as children, wouldn't it be so much nicer and easier to just understand that certain things yield certain results? They bring about certain consequences. So it's easier on you as a parent. You know what you're doing. It's easier on your children because they know. And so they also don't feel like they're being treated unfairly, because the truth is injustice walks in when one day it's one way and the next day there's no second chance. So they have more of a feeling of injustice when you are switching this around instead of being consistent. And it's a great thing for them to learn at such an early age. Just learn it the right way, that this is the way life is, because it is, and there's consequences. By all means, there are things that are an exception, or there are times when we do something differently for a reason, but overall, when things are constant and consistent, it just makes it so much easier and so much clearer. So I hope that whatever you choose, because you need to do what's best for you as a soul keeper and for the little soul that you're keeping, whatever you choose, make sure it works for you both. But do keep this in mind, because it tends to make life a lot simpler and a lot more enjoyable, and make it so that you can focus on being a soul keeper and keeping that soul. Thank you for joining me. Please visit me at CoachMaven.com.